Hello and welcome back. In this section, we'll have a look at how you can deliver high-quality software by using the testing and debugging tools shipped with Go. We're going to start off with unit testing. Unit testing is a software development practice in which individual units of a program, hence the name, are tested in isolation if they work as intended. This testing is usually done in a way so that it can be automated. Let's have a look at a quick example. This code snippet contains an example struct modeling any kind of customer or user. As you can see, each user has a name and an age, and we have a method that should determine if a given customer should be eligible to buy a certain kind of product in a certain location. Imagine that you're running an online shop or a point of sale system that needs to know about this logic. This is obviously important business logic that needs to run correctly. If you imagine you're actually running an online shop that sells alcohol, you might get into a lot of trouble if you mess this up. So, for this reason, we should test that this code actually does work as intended. This is how a unit test case for the may buy beer method might look like. In Go, test cases are placed into files with the _test_go suffix. Test cases are typically placed in the same package as the unit they are supposed to test, and each test case is a function in that test file. The name of a test function has to start with test, and it has to accept the testing framework testing.t as parameter. So let's look at the actual contents of this test case. Typically, a unit test will consist of 3 parts. Usually, you should start by setting up your system under test, in this case by instantiating a customer struct with some set of values. Next, you invoke that unit that you want to test, in this case the may buy beer method, and observe the output of that method, in this case the return values, 1 boolean value and 1 error. And lastly, you need to assert that the actual output of the unit under test matches the expected output. In this case, we assert that the method did not return an error value, so error should be nil, and that the specific customer is not eligible to buy beer. Of course, usually a single test case is in most cases not really useful for really testing a function. Typically, you will need to devise a set of test scenarios that covers all possible cases that your unit under test should encounter. And then you'll have to write test cases for all of them. Once you have written your test cases, you can use the go test command on the command line to actually run them. Let's have a look at how this works in action. This is the complete test suite for the example customer struct that we saw earlier. Now, let's switch to the command line to run these tests. The -v switch makes the output of the tests more verbose. This allows you to see the results of individual test cases. Now, to make things more interesting, let's modify our code to produce some not so correct results. And run our tests again. As you can see, we now have a failed test case. Of course, real-life scenarios are more complicated than the simple example, but in any case, a good set of unit tests often prevents you from accidentally breaking the desired behavior of your program. Before coming to an end for this video, let's have a quick look at a useful library that you can use when writing unit tests, the Testify Toolkit. The Testify Toolkit allows you to easily express assertions on the desired output state of your unit under test. As you can see in this example, using the Testify Toolkit, you don't need all the conditional statements from the previous examples, since the Testify Toolkit offers a lot of functions that simply do things like assert that a value is nil, or assert that a value is true or false, or whatever you like. Have a look at the toolkit's documentation, linked below in the example, for a complete list of functions offered by the Testify Toolkit. That's it for this video, but we're not done with unit testing yet.